Welcome to Business Success Tips, where you learn to make more money in less time and hopefully have a lot more fun. I'm your host, Paul Sanneman. I'm founder of Contractor Staffing Source. We help contractors build great teams. My guest today is Bracken Anderson from 𝗦𝗦𝗐𝗡𝗏𝗡. So, Bracken, what does 𝗦𝗦𝗐𝗡𝗏𝗡 do?
I am so glad you asked, Paul, and thanks for having us. We're excited to be on today. 𝗦𝗦𝗐𝗡𝗏 essentially helps bridge the gap between the field and the office. So what's happening on the field, whether it's with your safety management, with your time tracking, with your fleet, let's streamline what's happening out there, push it to the office, and give business owners the ability to make some, data-backed decisions for their business.
Okay, so give me a practical, you have a product called BusyBusy, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is
So nice you
BusyBusy
say it twice.
do?
So BusyBusy has been around for about 15 years. That's the product of 𝗦𝗦𝗐𝗏𝗏 that I started with. So brief overview too. 𝗦𝗦𝗐𝗏𝗏 is our parent company. And so we have three sister products alongside BusyBusy. And we have safety reports, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's helping companies report on their safety management, doing toolbox talks, all that kind of stuff. Fleet Watcher is also pretty similar to what it sounds like. What's happening with the fleet? Is there too much idle time? How are the loads looking, and so on and so forth. And then Tool Watch, also exactly what it sounds like. Where are
That's
your
easy.
tools?
BusyBusy
Yep,
is the
those
only
ones
one
are
that doesn't
easy.
explain itself, right?
I know. It's the one that doesn't explain itself, and it's also like the catchiest. So it's like, what do we do there? But to dive in on BusyBusy, mobile time tracking, job costing, and safety. Been around for about 15 years. And essentially, if you have field employees that are going to, different locations every day, you need an app that is built for that. You need an app that is going to help put time to a job and ensure it's, being captured correctly. Employees are where they're supposed to be, clocking into the correct jobs and getting stuff done, because you can't be, more than one place at once.
Now, I've heard some issues from contractors about the client, the employees not wanting to be tracked, and do they? Is there any legal? Because you hear all kinds of urban legends about, well, you can't track me on my phone, it's not legal, I have to agree to it,
Mm-hmm.
and blah blah blah. So can you enlighten me where? Because it does it change by state? Because in a perfect world, everybody has a tracking device on their phone. You know where they are anytime they're at work, whether they're you know going to the Home Depot and hanging out at the restaurant an hour later or not. You know all that stuff
Mm-hmm.
if you can track everybody. But people generally don't love to be tracked for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that all work?
It's a fun conversation, and it's one that comes up all the time, especially because the construction industry as a whole is really so far behind in adopting technology. Like, if you go back 30 or so years and compare the technology adoption that the manufacturing industry has had, I mean, manufacturing and construction used to sit pretty parallel as far as like growth and such, and then they really adopted technology, and construction, kind of didn't. So, it's a topic that we talk about all the time. And the first thing I like to say is, if you're informing your employees in advance, like, hey, we're going to be bringing in a new time tracking software or a new CRM or a new, whatever that does have GPS in it, usually it helps to kind of just give them an idea that it's coming. From a BusyBusy standpoint, we have a ton of help center articles available to send to employees so that they understand what it actually means when we say BusyBusy is tracking your location. So we all have cell phones. They are tracking our location all the time, whether we, like it
Right,
or not. So
right.
with the BusyBusy app, you only are able to see locations of employees when they are actually on the clock. So if an employee is clocked in and being paid by, you as the business, you're going to be able to verify that they're where they're supposed to be during that time. The second they hit clock out, or the second they go on break, you can't see their location. We can't see their location. The second they're off the clock. So if they go to the bar Friday night and their girlfriend calls up and wants to know, hey, where's Paul? You have that BusyBusy app, go check it. It's not how it works. We can't see
Right.
that.
Well,
The
now,
business owner can't see it.
what about is there any legal issues that do they
Yeah.
have to do it or not? I mean, because some people say, well, I don't have to tell you where I am because in the state of California, or pick a state, you can't
Mhm.
legally track me or whatever.
Yeah, good question. Thanks for bringing that one back up, because I totally let that one slip from my brain. So, I'm not a lawyer, but so I would always double check with your legal team and such, but to answer on a really broad view, there typically is not an issue with it, especially because they have to consent to having the app take their location on their phone. So it's nothing like sneaky or anything that way. I think the only time you start to get into like maybe a stickier situation with GPS and whether or not it's allowed is if you're a part of a union. A lot of times there's some rules around that, but it's hardly ever comes up. I mean, in my 4 years at BusyBusy, I've never talked to a company that's like, it's illegal. So I'm sure there's some caveat to that, but
what if I say I don't want to have it on my phone? Can you say, well, if you're going to be employed, you're going to have it on your phone. If you don't have it on your phone, you're no longer employed here. I mean, can you go to that extreme or not?
I believe you can, and that really comes more into the state level. Like I know for Utah, which is where BusyBusy is based out of, it's an at-will employment state. So for any reason at any time, you could be let go from your job in Utah. So we do have contractors who will say that, who are just like, well, if you want to get paid, you're going to use this. And, that's bittersweet. There's pros and cons to that. But I do think depending on your state, you can do that. However, with BusyBusy, we know, especially with the construction industry, that there are going to be times when it just simply doesn't work for a crew. Maybe most of the crew is pretty tech savvy, but you have a couple of crew members who aren't, or maybe one crew that is very like remote and just really doesn't have cell phone service and things that way. So we have different ways to track time. So in those cases, when it's really, really a hard stop, we have the ability for a supervisor or a foreman to use their phone to keep track of time for a crew, or we could turn like a company phone or iPad tablet into a kiosk. So there's some ways around it, but it really is quite rare that we have an employee super upset by that.
Well, that's good. Now, what about language issues?
Also a good question. So, and I usually tap on this part too, which is offline and online, because I mentioned the remote areas that maybe are being currently under construction. So
Right.
BusyBusy works offline. It also works in both English and Spanish. So if the employee's phone is in Spanish, then everything hard-coded in BusyBusy will also be in Spanish.
Okay. Now, so give me some success stories where it just did an amazing job and some places where it maybe didn't work. And so people know whether it's appropriate for them or not.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, I'm glad that you said that, because I was thinking through a story when you brought up like, oh, like, are there employees who do like just say, I don't want it? What happens? So this is perfect success story. It's kind of bittersweet for the person that I'm going to tell the story about, but we had a deal that was pretty far along. I don't know how many employees were going to be using the BusyBusy app, but they were like basically ready to sign. Our sales guy had been working with them for a while to strategize and consult on like, hey, here's the features that you could use that could really benefit you, what we see companies similar to you do. So it's one thing that BusyBusy is great at, is taking kind of a consultative approach. But we talked through it. They got really close. He had created the account. They were like ready to pretty much rock and roll. And then the owner of the company got on. He was like, I can't do this. I'm just way too nervous. Like, I know my main supervisor, I can't lose him. He's not super tech savvy. I know he's not going to like this. He's a huge part of my business. I can't do BusyBusy because I just know he's not going to use it. Full stop. So we're like, okay, we didn't really hear from him for a while. And then he called up our sales guy quite a few months later and was like, Dustin, I need this right now. And Dustin's like, okay, like what changed? He's like, well, that supervisor I told you about that I just knew wasn't going to use it. Well, he ended up leaving, starting his own company. And he just called me and said, hey, man, you got to check out this app, BusyBusy. Like, I just rolled it out for my crew and it's like amazing. It's been a game changer. So that's like one of the best stories that we could hear from like a marketing perspective, because like the fact that the whole reason he didn't do it is because he didn't think his employee didn't give him the opportunity to, and so on and so forth. Like, bittersweet for him, although like a great story for us to be able to tell. And now they're both clients and it's great. So I mean, that's a very minimal success story, but to say like, what do we see our clients succeed with? I mean, we could go into a lot of data as far as like accurate time tracking, accurate labor job costing, and so on and so forth. But from a really overarching standpoint, our average client sees a 30% increase in profitability within the first 12 months of using BusyBusy. A huge part of that is because time theft, whether it's intentional or unintentional, is so massive. In fact, I'll even send you a link to check out. It's a calculator on our website. It's crazy. It shows you like how much money you're losing to wasted wages, essentially. But a huge reason for it is because employees are used to be paying that 40 hours, those 8 hours on the dot. But when they start using BusyBusy or using a time tracking app that is truly getting real-time data, they start getting paid for 36.5 hours and 37 hours. And they're like, wait, where's my 40, my 41, my 42? And it's like, well, you weren't actually working that. So that kind of kickstarts people to put in that true 40 hours or whatever, which then upticks your productivity because you were already paying out this 40 hours for so long,
Right.
but you were only getting the productivity of 36 or 35 or, whatever. And so that's a huge part of the win, but also just getting data, knowing where it's at. I mean, we're doing photos and videos. If you're not taking pictures on job sites, you should be, whether that's, with us or company cam or crew cam or whoever that is. Like, we have a lot of great partnerships there, but bottom line is like capture the data from the field and know exactly where it's at in case you ever need it from an office or business decision standpoint.
Well, I mean, the old days, I'm an old guy, the employees on Friday afternoon would fill out their time cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
There were paper time cards and go, oh, I work, and they just sort of make it up as much as they could remember where they were and what happened, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
there was very little correlation between what really happened and what the time card said. Now I'm
Yes.
assuming your app literally tracks the time by task, right?
Yes. So depending on how the client wants to do it, we will kind of meet them where they are. But essentially, employees open up the app, they hit the bright blue clock in button, and then we can set up different, stops from there. So do you want them selecting the project they're on? Do you want them selecting what task they're working on? So maybe I'm at job A and I'm doing prep work. Do you need them to select what piece of equipment this time should be tied to? And so on and so forth. So it can get really granular just depending on where the client's
Well, I
at and
mean,
what their needs are.
to me, there's a couple reasons. One is for job costing, you need to know whether he's on the roof or
Mm-hmm.
he's, sweeping out the garage or he's working on cabinets because there may be different rates for different things you're charging the client and you're missing
Mm-hmm.
opportunities. Then there's also a workman's comp issue where if he's on the roof, there's one workman's comp rate, and if he's sweeping the
Yep.
garage, there's another workman's comp rate, and that can be a huge difference, right?
Most
So,
definitely.
and we had a client the other day whose literally whole job is to get money. They audit workman's comp because workman's comp always finds it in the favor of themselves. They just do a blanket thing, is, oh, we'll charge everybody for being in the roof all day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make it
Mm-hmm.
easy, but that costs the contractor a ton. He doesn't need to pay. So
Mm-hmm.
what they do is the companies go back and they audit what the insurance company did, and the insurance company always way over bills. So it's like interesting.
Yeah.
But if you don't track the time, you can't tell them they're overbilling because you don't know where the guy actually is, right?
100%. Yep. You hit that on the head there. And it goes as far too. Like, we had a client somewhat recently who started working with us and he was like, all I want to do is track time to a project. And then he was an electrical contractor. I want them to say whether they are in front of a wall wiring or anything else. So he just only had employees selecting project and then in front of a wall or not in front of a wall. Because when they're in front of a wall and they're truly wiring, like, that's when he was making the most money and was the most profitable. And he's like, that's what I care about, because I need to see that. And then I can say, hey, these other 40 hours from your 2-week pay period, should we bring in somebody else to do some of this labor, like sweeping and so on and so forth? Or am I paying way crazy amounts for workers' comp that I shouldn't be? And those are some of the hidden costs that a lot of times people just don't realize exist, or
Right.
they think, oh, it's not that big of a deal. But I mean, exactly what you just said, it is, and it adds up quick.
Right. I mean, and if you're running on, let's say, a net of 10%, which is really common for contractors, I mean, that literally can wipe out all your profit by people just not doing their job or taking too long at Home Depot and having whatever, you pick one, right? Because, the biggest inefficiency and the biggest cost in construction is labor. No doubt. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you've got
Mm-hmm.
materials, but that can be fixed. You can negotiate materials. But the big thing that kills companies is labor, 100%. And this is the only way I
Yes.
know if they can actually track labor and get their, hands on what it really costs them to do something. And you can't control it if you can't measure it, right?
hmm You're like quoting our founder. I'm loving it. You can't measure what you don't track, and you can't
Right.
you can't
You
grow from
can't. So
that.
the
And
problem
then
is, now I look at it, when you're running a construction company, you usually get killed on labor cost. I mean, nine times
yes.
out of 10, if you look at where they lost their butt, it's in labor, right?
hmm
And if they can't track it, they can't measure it. The other thing that happens, and I think it's a great point, is once it gets measured, they happen to get more efficient. It's just like, you know, when somebody is being measured on something, they're more efficient than when they're not being measured. It's just human nature, right?
Yeah, 100%. And you hit another nail on the head, which is that it's the biggest variable cost on a job site. You have those fixed materials, but yeah, I mean, the labor is what makes or breaks it. I mean, a question for you, Paul, what do you see the most well-run contractors do differently when it comes to managing their crews and job site visibility? Is
Well,
it that time tracking or?
what happens is a lot of guys are going to subcontracting everything because the
hmm
subcontractor, the electrical, the plumbing, they have a fixed cost, right? So
hmm
if I'm a paper contractor, I know that my electrical on this house was 10 grand, not my problem. But then it passes the problem to the electrical contractor, right? Because then he has to track his cost, or the
Yeah.
subcontractors, because if their people are not efficient, they're in big trouble. So to me, he's just sort of passing the buck down to somebody else. But if it's not getting measured, I can clearly say, and this is just from my many years experience, if it's not getting measured, you're wasting money. No doubt in my mind.
100. Yeah. Yeah. You're totally right. And I think that goes for everything in life, right? Like, especially, I always compare it to like just dieting and healthy eating. Like, you think you're eating so healthy and clean, but when you really slow down and like track what you're eating, you're like, oh, this has so many more calories than I would have
Than you
ever
thought, right?
expected. Yeah.
That's true. I
Yeah.
mean, and
It's,
any goal setting, whether you're trying to get healthier or trying to make more money,
hmm
whatever, all goal setting depends on the ability to track. And I use an example, when I was coaching, that if you're flying a Piper Cub, there's the sky, there's the ground, don't hit anything. Doesn't matter. It's a small business. But the minute you start flying a faster plane, like you go from doing, 500,000 a year to doing 2 or 3 million a year, it's like you got from Piper Cub to a jet. If you don't have controls, you're going to die because you can't fix it. The problem is most contractors try to fix labor when it's too late. And they try
hmm
to upcharge the client for their mistakes. The clients don't buy it. They go, well, I know it was supposed to cost, 3,000 to put the cabinets in, but it's actually going to cost 6,000. They go, I'm not going to pay the 6,000. Prove to me that it costs 6,000. And they haven't got any
yeah.
documentation, and so they have to eat the 3,000. Multiply that by 50 and you're in trouble, right?
Yeah. And I mean, another thing there, and we talk about it a lot, which is actually part of like the origin story of BusyBusy, our founder who was in the excavation industry and created Busy out of a need for his own company. Um, he talks a lot, and I don't know if this is actually a real thing or if he coined it, but he talks a lot about the construction triangle. And it's something we've built a lot around. And again, it could be a real thing, it could also be a him thing, but essentially he's like, there's a lot of construction companies. I mean, 70 or so percent of construction companies fail in the first like 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
which is I mean, a harsh stat. And if you even
It's
look at like
probably a
the
little
first
bit of
three
the
years and
restaurants, but
5 years
not
and
much, right?
yeah, exactly. But the thing about it is that most construction companies, so like we're going to draw a triangle right here. You have the estimate side, you have the execute side, and then you have the evaluate side. Most contractors are really good at that estimate and execute. They go in, they look at a job, they know what it's going to take them, and then they come in and they do it. But that evaluate part is really what kills them. And a lot of it comes back to what you said about, labor being the biggest variable cost. But the other thing too is a lot of contractors start their business, maybe like painting, for example. They painted in college, they decided they really liked it, they were good at it.
Right.
Like, I want to start my own painting company, I want to be my own boss. And it's like, yeah, you're good at that estimate and execute, but you're missing the mark on this evaluate. So if you're not going back and looking at those jobs, and if you don't have the data from an app like BusyBusy to actually truly look at what happened, then you can't evaluate and then you can't make your estimates better. And it just becomes like
Right. Well,
this
the other
life
thing is
cycle.
that if you can't, we have like a 94% success rate of people saying the construction industry has a 50% success rate, which sucks, right? The other thing
Mhm.
is the average bad employee is going to cost somebody $50,000 statistically. The numbers are crazy, right? So to me, if you hire an employee who's not willing to play the game, they're probably the wrong person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they go, well, I'm not going to tell you where I am. I'll frame the door. What it takes me, what it takes me. I'll frame the door how long it takes, or I'll do the concrete.
hmm
Those are the
hmm
bad employees because they end up costing. So I think if somebody doesn't want to sign on to being measured, they're probably not the right person, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So how does, just one last question. There are lots of apps that do this. How does yours compare to the other people out there? Because I'm sure you have competition.
Great question. Yeah. Well, and before we even hop there, I just want to make one more note about the last thing you said, which if they don't want to quote unquote be tracked or, have an app or track their time, they're probably not the right employee. And really what we see a lot, I mean, because we talk to thousands of construction companies
Right.
every month or whatever,
Right.
but what we see a lot is that A players, like true good employees, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, Paul, they want to be tracked because they
They
want to
do.
show off their work. Like I grew up with my dad's a GC, my grandpa was a GC on my mom's side. And so like I've grown up on job sites, and even to this day, driving around my mom's hometown with my grandpa, he's like, oh, I built that. Oh, I redid that roof. Oh, I did that. I did this. Like there's a huge sense of pride in the construction industry, as there should be, because it's truly like a craft. And it's one thing
Mhm.
that's really gotten lost through all of the tech and oh, you need to go to school to be successful and you need to do all these things. So breathing some new life into the trades, which is I've seen it a lot in the events I've been to the last like 2 years. So many young people. There's a young group and then there's an old group. There's not a lot of this like in between. And so
Right.
A players, these young kids too coming in, they're used to tech. They will roll into a new job and you hand them a paper, they're like,
Well, no, they want to say, look at, you got two crews. I bet you we can frame this faster than those guys. It's competitive, right?
mm-hmm,
And when
mm-hmm,
you get that working for your company, I can do this slab faster than the next guy. And you get that kind of competition feeling, and you can't be
mm-hmm,
competitive unless you measure it, right? It's like playing basketball
mm-hmm.
without a hoop.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think it's a way of measuring stuff, and they're improving everybody's performance.
yeah.
So is that because are there other apps out there, and why are you the best?
Yep, great question. And also, if you're trying to gamify it and you're trying to measure, check out Protiv. I'm sure you've met them at like one of the winter
Right.
summits or whatever that we've been to, but they've done a great job of that, like just taking the measurements that people are getting from the field and gamifying it. But to answer your question, who are we better than and why? Our it's a brown noser answer. I was saying this on a call earlier, but paper is still our biggest competitor, even 15 years into the space. Like the amount of really like massive construction companies we talk to that are using paper, it's mind-boggling. So that's the first thing is like get off of paper. And I don't mean like a glorified paper time card where you're just texting it in or using a spreadsheet. It's
Right.
like find an app that is built for people going all around.
Right.
The other thing is that a lot of companies will use like the app that's built into their payroll software or their accounting software. Like we run into QuickBooks Time a lot, and that's super common because people think, oh, well, I want it to link with my QuickBooks, and a lot of contractors start with QuickBooks, and it's like apps can do that these days. Like BusyBusy integrates with your QuickBooks. You're a construction company, you need real data, shift to something that is built for you. So I'd say paper and QuickBooks Time, or like just an average like payroll time tracking thing is what we run
Right.
into because they're like, oh, it's free. It's like, well, it's maybe free
Well,
up
it's not
front, but it's
free if it's
costing you
costing
a
you
lot.
labor, right? It's
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
The lost
Yeah.
opportunity cost is huge. I agree.
Yep.
Our biggest competition is people doing it themselves, thinking a problem, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
paper. I mean, you do it yourself, you have a retention rate of 50%, and you're a bad employee, it costs you $50,000, do the math, right? So,
Yeah.
in your case, what does BusyBusy cost? That's one final question.
Yeah. Easy. So we have two different tiers with BusyBusy, either a pro or a premium. And one is great and one is also great. It just, will meet you where your needs are, but you're either going to be $10 a month per employee billed annually or $15 a month per employee billed annually. We do have like additional modules you can add on and such, but one thing about BusyBusy that really sets us apart with our pricing as well is that we bill based on your average employee count. So if on average you have 15 employees, that's what we're going to charge you for the year. And then each month based on actual usage, we're going to pull from that retainer essentially that you paid us. So if one month you have 28 people, we'll pull 28 employees worth of credit. Next month it's ground's frozen solid, you're not working, there's 4 people, we're just going to pull 4 employees worth of credit. So we try and get companies covered for a year, but it could be 8 months, 14 months. It just depends there.
So I would give you the ROI, but it's probably off the charts. It was not even believable, right? I mean, you pay $10 an employee and they end up doing $1,000 worth of stuff. I don't know what the ROI is, but it's crazy, right? So, I mean, my advice is if you're not using this, it's costing you thousands of dollars a month, easy. And it's all profit. It all comes out of your pocket. So to me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, if you're not using a time tracking system, you're just flat losing money. So I really thank you being here. If you're not using one, give Bracken a call because you're losing a lot of money and you don't even know how much you're losing, which is really scary.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us, Paul. And mention the podcast when you chat with us, and you'll get additional 3 months worth of credit put on your account for hearing about us through there. And also, if you do want to see what just inaccurate time is costing you, and we're not even talking about the opportunity cost or the, productivity. If you just want to simply see like, how much money am I paying? Go to BusyBusy.com and go to our resources and select our calculator, hit the savings calculator, and you can put in your employees' average rate, how many employees you have, and you'll see like if you have, 50 employees and you're not using a solid time tracking app, you're paying, I don't know, $11,000 a month.
4 employees. I mean, if you have, it doesn't matter. 5 employees.
It doesn't. It truly doesn't matter.
Because if there's anybody besides you out there working, it's costing you money. So if you're listening to this, you only have 4 employees, use it.
Go look at it.
It's still costing you for sure. I appreciate being here, Bracken. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul. Super appreciate you. We love working with you guys.
Thanks.